Testing.
Oh, okay.
This is kind of surreal. Hello. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plane.
I'm hoping that I'm not like, they can't hear me in the lobby.
That's great. Okay, that's good. We have a few more people coming in. I can see you all thought that the best seats were all the way in the back. Welcome on behalf of Linda and her family to be here and honor Steve. We just welcome you all. Your presence reflects the depth and breadth of Steve's impact. All of us have gone through losses, and I think that losing someone we love and respect always comes way too soon. I've found that the depth and breadth of our grief reflects the impact they had on our lives. Your presence reflects that depth. I met Steve 44 years ago at grad school. He became my best friend. That's how I came to, I think, stand here today, is that when Linda asked me to do this, I can't think of anything more honoring to Steve than to support his family. He stood out the first time I met him, not just that he stood taller, because he did. It was the car that he drove. Some of you may know this, some of you may not, but it was a Datsun 240Z. Long before he owned those Porsches, he owned a sports car. And it was orange. Steve would say it wasn't orange. He said it was persimmon. Steve and Linda just celebrated their 41st wedding anniversary a couple weeks ago. And Linda and Steve, one of their very first dates before they got married was with my wife, Christy, and I. They invited us to their wedding. And when they asked us to be Christy's godparents, I knew that we would be lifelong friends. This morning, you're going to hear from people that Steve had tremendous impact on. I think there's two questions that define the course of anyone's life. Who do you want to be remembered by? And what do you want to be remembered for? By the time we finish each of the speakers this morning, they will shine a special light on who Steve thought was important and what he wanted to be remembered for. Our first speaker is Chancellor Gillum from UCI. Steve had a love for UCI, but when you think about the institution, I'm going to suggest to you it wasn't his love for this university, it was Steve's love for young people and putting them in a position to succeed. He did it quietly, he did it perseverantly, but he was always engaged in trying to make this university a better place to equip people and young people for the generation and the future to come. Our first speaker, Chancellor William.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning to you all. This is a sad occasion. The loss of such a beloved person, a person so full of life, a person who lit up every room he would enter, who made you happy to see him. So the loss is deeply felt, but as Jim said, it's deeply felt when it's so deeply felt. It is important to honor and celebrate such an amazing life and to take inspiration from what it looks like for a life to be so well lived. And I have to say it's a special honor for everyone at the University of California, Irvine, that we're gathering on this campus. As I'll mention, Steve had such a love affair with this campus over a long time, but he touched so many lives on this campus, and his loss is deeply felt by many people here. And so we're grateful for the opportunity and the honor to sponsor and host this event. To Steve's loving spouse, Linda, to his beloved daughters, Christy, Kimberly, Kelsey, his precious grandchildren, to his brother, Mike, I offer you and this entire university community my deepest condolences. You were truly the light of Steve's life. The UC Irvine Alumni Association uses the phrase anteater for life to describe the ideal relationship between the campus and its alumni. If there was ever an anteater for life. It was Steve. He came to UC Irvine in the fall of 1975, almost 50 years ago, and it seemed like he never left. By the time Steve graduated in 1979, he was known all across campus for his leadership and skills on the baseball field. He was a pitcher, a very good one. He always told me I didn't have a lot of pitches, but the ones I had worked, and he was so good, in fact, that after his senior year, he was drafted by the Milwaukee Brewers to play professionally. Steve ultimately, of course, decided that his future lay elsewhere, and baseball's loss was finance's gain. He became one of the most respected investment managers in the nation and a pillar of our community. And as I mentioned, his impact at UCI spans nearly 50 years, from his time as a student athlete, playing baseball for the Anteaters, to his steadfast engagement across the campus. He was a founding member of the School of Social Sciences Board of Counselors, in addition to serving on numerous leadership boards, Sports Professionals for Brain Research, the Center for Investment in Wealth Management, the Athletic Directors Leadership Council, the Anteater Club Advisory Board, the UC Irvine Foundation Board of Trustees, to name just a few. Steve wasn't the type who lent his name to something and did nothing. Everything he committed to, he did wholeheartedly. And so that is why Steve was such an obvious choice when we selected him to receive the 2018 Extraordinarius Award, the highest honor bestowed by the University of California Alumni Association, honoring outstanding alumni for their service to the community, professional excellence, and campus involvement. He was extraordinarius. Steve had many areas of interest on campus, but his passion for baseball and supporting student athletes was unparalleled. Steve pitched for the Anteaters from 1976 to 1979, and over the last 22 years, Steve has been a guiding force for UCI athletics. Recently, the Borowski family made the largest gift in UCI athletics history, $5 million, to name the new Player Development Center. This gift will transform the future of UC Irvine baseball, impact countless athletes, and honor Steve's legacy for generations to come. His passion for supporting students and advancing academic excellence was inspiring. He was a mentor, a role model, and leader who uplifted those around him, encouraged risk-taking, and helped others strive for excellence. Steve's relationships on campus were vast and deep. From campus leadership, students, trustees, and community partners, Steve has left an indelible mark on so many individual lives. And to all of us who are here today, beloved family, colleagues from Aristotle, community organizations, and friends, as we grieve this tremendous loss, let us also remember and celebrate the extraordinary, almost extraordinarious life he lived, and the kindness and commitment he shared with us all. May his memory be a blessing. And now, please turn your attention to two tribute videos from Bill Maurer, the Dean of the School of Social Sciences, followed by head baseball coach Ben Orloff and our student athletes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today as we honor and celebrate the life of our dear friend, mentor, and extraordinary human being, Steve Borowski. I'm so sorry I can't be there, but in a turn of events I know would make Steve smile, I'm on an airplane right now to Ghana in Africa to talk to a group of scholars and policymakers about banknote security and design. Just the kind of oddball expertise you only find in a university like UC Irvine, and which always made Steve chuckle. advance in their career, Steve always acted with a sense of responsibility and care, not because he had to, but because it was simply who he was. He got a kick out of the fact that I know nothing about sports, and so respectfully, he shied away from that topic with me. But baseball was huge for him. He supported one of my faculty members' research on baseball metrics and understood that sport is a way of bringing people together, passing down lessons about teamwork, dedication, and resilience. Most of our conversations eventually turned to Steve asking me what I wanted to do when I grew up. Steve had a gift for mentorship, always encouraging others to pursue opportunities that would help them grow. He once told me, I've always taken the position that when you have outstanding people, you do what you have to do to keep them, but if there's something out there that may be a better opportunity, you wish them well and remain friends. Once, when I was considering an opportunity at Apple, which would have been far outside my comfort zone, he said to me, what's the worst that can happen? Besides, you might be able to get me a discount on my next iPhone. Steve believed in taking chances, in supporting people in their ambitions, and in staying connected no matter where life took them. Steve also had a wonderful ability to find humor in everyday moments. When he won the Loves and Laurels Extraordinarius Award, he shared with me that while Linda and his daughter had a good laugh about it, his son-in-law knew better than to say anything. He had a quiet wit that made even the most ordinary conversations memorable, and his sense of humor had a way of making challenges feel a little lighter. Even when things were getting bleak, he found a way to make it better. I can't tell you how many pictures of his scars I have, some taken from his hospital bed. Beyond his work and family, Steve's curiosity and enthusiasm for life never faded. Whether it was sending me articles on emerging tech trends, or making an unexpected purchase, like a 1932 Chevy Confederate Sport Roadster, he embraced life with an openness and excitement that was contagious. Steve's impact is profound and lasting. He was a mentor, and a friend, and a person who made the world a better place simply by being in it. His absence leaves a void, but his kindness, wisdom, and generosity remain with us. Linda, to you and your family, please know how much Steve was loved and admired. His legacy will live on in the countless lives he touched and in the memories we will cherish forever. Thank you.
Steve Borowski is going to be really missed. His generosity and what he meant for UC Irvine baseball and vice versa, what UC Irvine baseball meant to him. There was nobody that supported our program through all the times like Steve, not just financially. Steve was always there for the games. The amount of texts that he would send me when stuff was going good or when stuff wasn't going good. His constant presence with our players, doing things to help them. I mean, he's a big reason why I still work at UC Irvine is because of Steve and what this place means to him. Outside of all the Irvine stuff, Steve was a really good friend. I got to know Steve a lot over these last 12 years coaching here and feel really fortunate that about 4 weeks before he passed, I got to spend about 3 hours with him in his living room. And during that time, he wasn't doing great, but like typical Steve, he was worried about everybody else. One of the last things he talked about was he wanted to make sure that we fed Louisiana, that when we went there in 2021, they fed us after the games. And one of the things on Steve's mind was making sure that we reciprocated and treated them with the respect that they did with us. And so Steve was a really special friend. He meant a ton for UC Irvine, and he meant a ton for me personally, and he'll forever be missed.
One of my favorite memories of Steve Borowski was going to his house my freshman year. Being a freshman is obviously very scary, and you don't know too many guys, so being able to go to his house and bond with the guys was just amazing. Also, Steve is a great griller. I think I housed like 4 burgers that day, but he's a great guy. Another memory I have with him, I don't come from much, so I needed help with flights and things like that for summer ball, and he always helped me out every year, and he was a great guy.
I think it's incredibly evident how much Steve Borowski did for not only the baseball program, but the entire athletics department as a whole. I know for us personally, he would have us down in the fall every year at his own house on the beach, and it was kind of the kickoff to the baseball team, and it's where we did a lot of team bonding, and Steve knew how much that meant to us, and he knew what it did for us as a team. But it goes beyond that. It goes beyond the baseball program, like I mentioned. Personally, Steve helped me get a job. He took me out to breakfast and I needed a job for the summer. He made sure that I had a job and that it was something that I was interested in. Steve was an amazing person. He would always check in on me, anything I needed. He was great with the alumni that played for UC Irvine baseball. I had the opportunity to present about Steve Borowski one of the years, and it was just amazing getting to hear his stories about what UC Irvine meant to him, and he just really cared about every single person on this team, and it went above and beyond every single time. So Steve Borowski will be missed for sure.
This is a celebration, so I think you can give those folks a hand. They're just really terrific. Chancellor Gilman, thank you. Your words, I know, would mean a lot. Who do you want to be remembered by, and what do you want to be remembered for? You start to get a glimpse of who Steve was. As well as you may know him, there's so much more depth there. Our next speaker, only way to introduce him is I played softball with Steve very early on. He was a pitcher, right? I don't know what pitch he had, but I think he had a fastball because the last guy I wanted to warm up with was Steve. Hand would hurt, under the lights, Miles Square Park, couldn't really see the ball. I always thought I was going to get hurt. But there's one gentleman that did it for a long time. And then who do you want to be remembered by? You want to be remembered by those teammates and those people that you spent countless hours with, honing your skills and doing great things and having a lot of fun. Our next speaker was a catcher at UCI and Steve's best friend and best man at his wedding, Dennis Krause.
Greetings. Thank you so much, Jim. I'd like to start off by saying, Steve Borowski, a life well lived. Now, that's going to be my theme of the talk because I thoroughly have had the opportunity to watch Steve grow as a person. I will make a little bit of exception to what the Chancellor offered. It is definitely a sad time for all of us, but today is absolutely a celebration. And I want to thank the Borowski family for making this happen, for hosting it and making this available for all of us that are here. So first of all, thank you. They got to go through a lot. It isn't necessarily for them. I think it's for all of us and everybody across the nation. And what's not to celebrate? So, Steve Borowski, a life well lived. My name is Dennis Krause, and I've had the pleasure of being a friend of Steve's for 5 decades. I got up the steps, I'm not that old, so bear with me. The thing I'll take a little bit of exception to is Steve loved gatherings. I mean, Steve loved having people, family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers just together. Now, I'm here talking today as a friend. I'm not a family member, I'm not a coworker, I'm not a neighbor, etc. But I've had the opportunity to be involved in about everything that man has done. So I have an interesting perspective on things. Now, as a host for any gathering, he was the consummate host. All of his gatherings, family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers, always were centered around more wonderful food than you could ever eat. And he was going to make sure nobody left hungry. Secondly, he just sat back and loved the fact that everybody that meant something to him were together, sharing spirited conversations and having a good time together. And that's what he wanted. So I look at this and I say, Steve, one thing he never looked for. Steve never wanted accolades. He never wanted to be called out. I remember when he got that award, he goes, that's embarrassing. I don't want to be there. And I go, no, Steve, you earned this. You should be there. So when I look at this event today, I go, well, the only thing I can offer to Steve is we're not shining a spotlight on you today. So I'm asking you, Steve, to relax, enjoy this. I look at it and say, if you had the opportunity to plan the perfect gathering, this would be it. All your friends, family, neighbors, and workers are all here to share stories, gather, have some food, and have a great time. And he sat back there. So Steve, relax, please enjoy today, because you're not in the spotlight, we're just enjoying you, okay? So I want to set that off. Now, one of his gatherings that he gave me a little bit of ammunition to always have a little fun with him, that I'll never forget, was Linda and Steve were so happy to host the engagement party for Christy and Justin. And he invited Jennifer and I to be at that event. Steve was so happy that we made it. The minute we got through the front door, he grabbed me and he started introducing me to everybody. Hi, I want you to meet Dennis. I've known him forever. In fact, he was the maid of honor of our wedding. And I started getting a lot of looks. I'm telling you, there were strange looks. I didn't know what to say, but he whisked me off to somebody else. And the girls finally heard it, and I don't know if it was Christy or if it was Kim or maybe both, but they grabbed him aside and they said, Dad, he was your best man at your wedding, not your maid of honor. I think you should introduce him that way. Steve's answer was, I kid you not, his answer was, it doesn't matter. I want him to meet everybody. I want him to fit in. I want him to have a great time. So all the things you guys have talked about so far, that's an example of he didn't care what he said. He was just happy people were there. Now, you guys touched on it. UCI baseball, I, like others in the crowd today, met Steve when we were on the ball field together here at UC Irvine. It certainly was a big part of Steve's life, and the people that played ball with us at that age, at that time in our lives, were spectacular individuals, and we have some of those folks here today. So what I'd like to do is give everybody a little bit of exercise, and the former players that are here today, I'm not going to ask you to stand, but I'd like you to raise your hands and just let people know you're here. So the Borowski family, these are people that helped shape Steve's life. Now, I'm going to make a comment here because I may get a little emotional, and I'm going to set my defense for the attorneys that are in the crowd. If Michael Jordan can get on stage on the world platform and cry at Kobe's situation, I sure am heckin' grand the right to if I show some emotion for Steve Borowski. So please bear with me. I want the Borowski family, if it's possible, to personally meet all those baseball players that are here. Those are some of the finest individuals in our society. Now, I don't want this to be a paid commercial for UC Irvine, but UC Irvine does not produce a bad product. They don't put bad people out in the world. Those are some of the finest individuals that you're going to meet, and I hope you get a chance to meet them. Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for being here. Now, I got to clarify a couple things about Steve as a baseball player. Obviously a physical specimen, obviously athletic talent off the charts, and God possessed him with a Hall of Fame pitch. It wasn't a fastball, Jim, it was a curveball. Now, Steve was a pitcher, I was a catcher. For those of you that aren't that adept and aware of baseball, let me just walk you through a little bit of that. When a team takes a field, baseball sends 9 players out there, and the objective is to get the other team out. Now the pitcher, they have a separate mound called the pitcher's mound, and it has a plate in it that is the pitcher's rubber. Now he throws it to the catcher who's behind home plate where the hitter's standing to hopefully knock the ball out of the park. So I had a lot of fun working with Steve and combating the challenges of trying to beat the opposing team, but his one pitch was his Hall of Fame curveball. And I am not kidding you. A fastball comes straight, and the hitter looks at it, and they're going to swing, think they're going to hit it. And Steve's God-given Hall of Fame pitch would just all of a sudden, boom, dive to the ground. And he made a lot of hitters look silly. It was virtually unhittable. Now, it was also virtually uncatchable. I'm going to give you a couple metrics. Again, for people that are not adept in baseball that intimately, some metrics. That pitching rubber to home plate is exactly 60 feet, 6 inches, right? no matter what Steve did, when he threw that Hall of Fame pitch that he had, no one else I've ever seen in baseball could throw it. It never quite made it that far. It would go 58 feet, 59 feet. Sometimes it would rock down and maybe got all the way to 60 feet, which means I'm not catching it, I'm trying to block it. Now, I tell you that because we spent countless hours in the bullpen trying to perfect that, because he had all the makings. He would have been at the top of that profession if he could have mastered that. And I probably was just a sight at UC Irvine. I think I hold the record of walking around with the most bumps, bruises, and just battered body because I never caught his pitch. I had it bounce off me, and I had to endure that. And if I could do it all over again, I would. Yeah. But that, in my opinion, and I know the family doesn't think Steve never accomplished whatever he set his mind out to, but that was a magical moment. Steve embraced the fact he's never going to master that distance situation. And he pulled me aside and he said, I'm not going to make it to the big leagues and go all the way to the top level. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put all my attention and all my power to help others get to the top level of their profession. And if they don't, I'm going to have an environment where I can hire them into my company, give them a job, give them the right platform to start their next career. And I tell you what, the fun started then, because then I got to watch his new journey. I equate two things that Steve brought to any situation that he went to. And this is where I get into how did he play his life so well. And you guys have talked about some things, and so did the videos, that will give you a little inside track to how I saw that manifesting itself. What I observed, Steve, in any encounter, brought two things to the party. He certainly brought his intelligence, and he brought friendliness, right? Now, on top of that, he had this innate ability, because of his inquisitive nature, that I used to tell him, you can see both sides of the coin. Everybody remember the story, there's two sides to every story, and somewhere between the two is the reality. Any situation Steve would walk into, because of his nature and his approach, he was always looking at the bottom of the coin on the table. Everybody else is looking at the top of it, because that's where he could grasp what the situation was. And that was just in his DNA to try and find that out, because I honestly believe, and I do honestly believe this, that he believed it. I believe Steve thought he could make any situation better and any person better. And boy, if you take a look at, I want to find out what's the whole situation so I can make a difference. I started watching that just manifest itself in everything he did. So I think his greatest contributions and his attributes certainly allowed him to be an asset for anything he was involved with, whether it was his companies, whether it was associations, the university, et cetera, et cetera. It's just how he turned his mind to what do I focus on now, what's important. He wanted to make things better. Now, I have an example of this that is a little bit different, but Linda gave me the forum to talk, and she knew what she was getting into. And I'm going to take advantage of it. But I have an example of how Steve put that into practice at a very young age. After he played his pro baseball, he came back and I saw some things when he threw batting practice for the California Angels. The third year that he did that, they needed an extra person, and Steve said, I got just a person for you, and he wheeled me in there, and I became the third batting practice pitcher that would throw batting practice for the Angels before every game. Oh, it was like, man, I get to show up to the big club every day, go in the clubhouse with all these, just superstars, put the professional uniform on and go on the field every day to help future, Hall of Fame players get ready for the games they're going to play. Wonderful, but didn't prepare me for the awkward situation that happened. You park outside the stadium 4 to 5 hours before a game. You start walking to the clubhouse and you get asked for an autograph. What do I do? So I asked my buddy Steve, you've been doing it for a couple of years, what do you do? He did not blink. He did not blink at all. He looked at me and he said, Dennis, whatever they ask you to sign, within reason, sign it and thank them. And I go, but I'm not a player. I'm not somebody on the roster. And all that. He goes, Dennis, it's not about you. Think about it. It's about them. He goes, how many people will take a day off from work, grab the family, bring them to the stadium 4 to 5 hours beforehand to see these athletes out there doing things and have enough encouragement, gumption to go up and ask them for something like an autograph? And he goes, when somebody does that, Dennis, that took a lot of guts for that person to do it. And when you sign it and thank them and they walk away, the absolute joy on their face is immeasurable, and they become a hero to their family. They're getting the hugs, they're getting all that. And he said, so Dennis, it's not about you, it's about that. Would you really ever want to take that away from them by not signing it? And I go, okay, well, Steve told me I could sign autographs. I don't know how many people became heroes because of me, but I honestly think that perspective on top of everything we talked about is a story that just exemplified what I saw as a friend to how he made that transition from everything he had going for him in baseball to what do I do next. So hope you don't mind that story. I really, really appreciate what I learned from Steve on that, because it wasn't about me. It was enriching and making other people's lives better. He also looked back at me and said, and by the way, you'll feel better about it too. You made somebody's day. So Steve had some amazing things, certainly some wonderful characteristics. Allow me to wrap up by saying that Steve touched a lot of lives, and everybody that's here today and throughout the nation, I believe are better people because they had Steve in their lives. And if I'm wrong, talk to me later. I'd like to find out your perspective, but I think that's why we're celebrating, because I think he contributed in such a way it had an impact in a positive way on our lives. So that being said, I tried to encourage Steve to write a book. I literally talked to him about, why don't you write a book on how you address life? And again, instantly he turned to me and said, nope, not needed. And I looked at him kind of puzzled, and I said, what do you mean it's not needed? He goes, we should spend all our effort, our energy, and our focus on properly educating the younger generations and nurturing their growth. A book like mine wouldn't be needed. So darn you, Steve, I guess profound I need to add to your attributes that you had. But I mean, when you hear those little sound bites, it gives you a little insight to how he became so successful, how he treated things and how he looked at it. And to the Borowski family, you're sharing them again with us today, and we can't be more thankful for that. So I'd like to make an official proposition. I don't know if the UC Irvine Foundation will back this. Again, I said UCI doesn't put out bad people, so I'm sticking to that. But I'd officially like to give Steve a new title today. Clearly, Steve owns the title of World's Greatest Dad. Right, ladies? And he wore that proudly. Only to be trumped by the next title of World's Greatest Grandfather. He could not wear a shirt that could hold his chest in for how proud he was for those two things. So he was the world's greatest grandpa. So when I try and look back and I look at the 5 decades of friendship with him, the best way I can sum it up is a new title for Steve. I believe Steve, if you don't mind me saying so, is the ambassador of people and goodwill. So I don't know if we can put a plaque on that. I don't think anybody else agrees, whatever. But that's how I view it. So the insights to his change and how he focused on things, and then the intestinal fortitude to do what he did, it's no surprise he infected so many people. And it was his perspective. So to Steve Borowski, my good buddy, we celebrate a life truly well played. Thank you all.
Who do you want to be remembered by? What do you want to be remembered for? Dennis, you captured so many of the great attributes and things that were important to Steve and how he touched people's lives. Our next speaker is going to touch in an area that really speaks to how private Steve was about a lot of things, but they'll continue to come to light. And I'm going to put it in this context. My wife and I were doing some work with some human trafficking issues, and they were building a project called the Lighthouse. And we needed a vehicle that would transport these young women. And they didn't want a minivan because their lives reflected nothing but horror when it came to being transported in a minivan. And we needed a fully decked out SUV. I picked up the phone and called Steve. I didn't even get done with the story or the request, and Steve said, "How much and who do I write the check to?" Our next speaker reflects that same type of giving in the way that Steve wanted to give back to the community. And that's Sloan Keene, CEO of Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Orange County and the Inland Empire since 2018, and a friend of Steve's for over 10 years.
Good afternoon. I'm going to honor Steve in the way that Steve would like to be honored, with a little bit of humor. So thank you for that. I'm going to get back to how amazing of a man Steve is. But I was going to start out with, Steve is a remarkably tall man. In fact, every time we started our board meetings or we were at an event, I could always tell when Steve was in attendance because I could see his head above everybody else's. And as a tall woman, I appreciated that. I actually wore heels for Steve tonight. It is an absolute honor. Linda and his family, thank you for allowing me to speak about Steve. I stand here today representing a whole lot of people. 35 board members, 99 staff members across 2 offices in Orange County and Riverside, and tens and thousands of youth who have been mentored because of Steve, because of his generosity, and because of his time. As we all get a little bit older, there is one thing I can tell you we cannot get back, and that is time. It is our most precious resource, and as it starts to get shorter and shorter, where you spend your time is what you believe in. So thank you to the Borowski family for sharing your husband, your father, your grandfather with tens of thousands of kids across our counties. To many, Steve was a leader, a successful entrepreneur, and a friend. But to those of us at Big Brothers Big Sisters, he was so much more. He is a true champion of young people, a visionary board member, and a generous soul whose impact will be felt for decades to come. Steve brought a deep belief in the power of mentorship. You've heard that word now, I think, through every speaker who's had the honor of speaking before me. He had a passion for exposing young people to opportunity. He knew that one conversation, one connection, could open one door and change one life. And he wanted every child to see what was possible. And you're right, Dennis, not just in school, but in his career. He dreamed big, he built something of his own, and he became a leader in his own right. He brought that same spirit of entrepreneurship and possibility into his service on our board. He didn't just offer ideas, again, he offered his time, his most precious resource, and of course, his heart. One quiet but powerful example of his generosity is every year Steve bought a table at our major fundraising event. And every year he told me, "You just fill it, Sloan. Don't worry about it. I'll show up. You just fill it." Just that simple gesture allowed me to bring people into our organization that never even knew the impact that we had. And Steve's hands off, "I'll buy it, you just fill it," is, I think, in a nutshell, the generosity, the humility, and the heart that Steve offered to every one of us here in this room. That was Steve, always lifting others up, always investing in the future. He chaired our investment committee for over a decade. Because of Steve and what he built in his own life and how he transferred that to our organization, we now have our first, in the tenure of Big Brothers Big Sisters, over 6 decades, a real investment account that spins off real revenue that helps me really serve kids. We have some people in the audience who have helped him do that. In fact, it's a full circle moment. As I walked in, I have known Steve for about a decade, but I met Steve through a good friend of mine, Melissa Beck, who is the previous CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters. Life is cyclical, and it's about a legacy. It's about who you meet and the impressions you make when you're here on this earth. And Steve did that in spades. In philanthropy, we like to talk about time, talent, and treasure. Time being the most important. Lending your talents. How do you take what you've done in life that's made you successful and then invest in other people and other organizations in order to multiply that? And then, of course, the investment in general. We heard today how he invested significantly in UCI. He's invested significantly in Big Brothers Big Sisters. But most importantly, Steve has invested significantly in me. It is an honor to be here today to represent all of the people in the community that Steve has impacted. We will miss him deeply, but we will carry his passion, his generosity, and his spirit forward every day in everything we do. Thank you again to the Borowski family, and thank you, Steve.
Sloan, you are tall. I have to lower the mic here. Who do you want to be remembered by? What do you want to be remembered for? Sloan, the touch that Steve had on your organization and others will be reached. And I hope, too, when we come together for these types of things, we never look forward to them because we're losing somebody that we care deeply about. But it is also an invitation to say, who's going to step into those shoes and extend that work? And I hope there's some of those people here today, Sloan, that extend that to you and your organization. Our next speaker, I'd like to pronounce her last name, but she told me it's part of her story. So obviously, it's something that's interesting. But when you think about who you want to be remembered by and what do you want to be remembered for men, so much of our identity is tied up in our career. Steve's went way beyond that, but the footprint of his career truly defines who he was and how he carried out so many of the things. His career made so many of the other things that we're talking about possible. Those donations and those contributions were a byproduct of his talent that God gave him and that he refined. But he had the heart to go and use it in other places. But the people that he worked with, he cared about deeply, and he left a lasting impact on them. I'm going to let Catalina tell you what the rest of the story is.
And I'll have to lower it a little bit more. Good morning. My name is Catalina Ginás, and I had the honor of working with Steve for 20 years. So think about that. I got to see Steve almost every day of almost every week for almost 20 years. And when I moved here from far away, I didn't know anyone, and the Borowski family, they welcomed me, and they made me feel that if I needed to, I had a family away from home. And for that, I will always be thankful. So one of the first memories I have of Steve is him wanting to learn how to pronounce my name properly. Now, I still have some coworkers that can't say my name properly, but Steve wanted to learn it, and his accent wasn't so good. And so he rehearsed, and I tried to explain the accent was at the end. Catalina Ginás, Catalina Ginás, Catalina Ginás. And he learned it, and he mastered it. And then for the first year or two that we went on presentations, he would say, and with me today is Catalina Ginás. And he would do this thing with his arm, and it looked as if he was part Italian, he was directing the orchestra. Today, I feel that was really sweet, but back then, it was very embarrassing. But also, during those first couple of years, we would go to meetings and people assumed Steve was going to be doing all the talking, because I looked very young back then, younger. And so we would go to the meeting, and they would assume he's doing the talking, and he would look at them and say, "Don't look at me, look at her. She has the brains, she knows everything. I'm just here for the carpool lane." But that just tells you who he was. It was never about him. It was, he got joy when those around him shine. And so as I was thinking, what do I share about Steve? I have thousands of stories, and I have thousands of things that I admired of him, and I started thinking about those things. I realized that Steve was all about consistency. 20 years I saw consistency, and what do I mean about that? Well, Steve was very consistent in the way that he treated people, whether it was the parking attendant or the largest corporation on the top floor where all the decisions were made. He treated everyone with the same kindness and respect. Steve was also very consistent of how he lived a life guided by integrity and moral values. And yet he never gave us any talk about corporate values. He never gave us a list of how we should behave. He just lived a life where he exemplified those values. And where there was a choice to make, he would make the right choice. And Steve was also very consistent of the love he felt about his family. And for 20 years, I got to hear him brag about his 3 daughters. And I got to hear him be so proud about his grandchildren. And I got to hear him be so proud about his wife. And Linda, when he would tell stories from time to time, he would refer to you as my bride. And I just thought that was so sweet. I've never had anyone grown up do that. It was very, very, very sweet. Steve was also very consistent on the love he felt for the company that he co-founded. And whether you ask him 10 years ago or 10 months ago, he would have said the same. What I love the most about Aristotle are the people. And he loved the people of Aristotle. He was proud of all of them. And he loved spending time with each of us. And he was fun, and he was funny, and at times he was goofy. And it was just so fun to be around him. And what I realized is that he let the people of Aristotle be who they are. They didn't have to pretend or talk about free cash flow generation or just put a facade. They would just sit with him and be themselves. And that was amazing. Steve was also very consistent on how available he was to all of us. Even when he had a bad day, his door was always open. So I knew when I had a bad day, something didn't go my way, I had a horrible meeting, all I needed to do was walk into Steve's office, selfishly, because I knew he would make me feel better. And when I had a good day and a success, all I needed to do was go into Steve's office to share it with him because he would be so happy for me. And he did this for me and for so many others. And there were times when I didn't think I could do something, and Steve believed I could do it. Even when I didn't believe in myself, Steve believed in me. And if he was here today, he would have said right before I came up here, "You got this." He used to do that. And as I was done, he would find a way to look at me and said, "That was great," because that's who he was. So every day when I walk to the kitchen, I have to walk by Steve's office. And it makes me sad. But I've also come to realize that Steve was a happy man. He lived life fully, and he shared that joy with all of us. And how lucky that we got to see that every day for so many years. And so I look to you, Steve, and I pray that when you check on us from time to time, that you feel proud, because we try as best we can to live a life with some of that consistency that you showed us. Thank you for everything, dear friend. You'll be missed. Thank you.
Can you all say, that was great? Go ahead, that was great. Thank you, Catalina. Remember years ago when my dad died, I had this saying, and a thought of my dad is that you had that thing that they said you have to walk the talk. And the difference is for a lot of folks, and my dad and Steve, I think of them similarly, and it's one of the highest compliments I can pay to Steve, is he didn't talk, he just walked. He walked by example. And that example is that consistency. And that consistency, I heard Catalina mention that word 3 times, and I would echo that. Consistent. You could just count on him. You just knew what to expect. Who do you want to be remembered by? What do you want to be remembered for? Obviously, the folks at Aristotle were very important to him, and one of the people that knows him the longest, Elon Ben Shalom, is here to share with us. And I think that what we're going to see again is that I said that you're going to see the impact, the influence of every one of these people is going to reflect the impact that Steve had. As much success that he had, Steve would be here today. He would tell you it was because of all the people around me, and he knew how to surround himself with great people.
Just a touch taller. I didn't realize it in the moment, and shame on me for never telling him, but Steve was a father figure to me in many ways. A corporate father, a mentor, a friend. He taught me invaluable life lessons, some big, some small, and so I thought this would be a great way to share some of them with you today. Lead by example. Our first work trip together was to Florida. We, of course, flew American Airlines, always American Airlines. LAX to Miami, about a 5-hour flight. And, with everyone, Steve insisted that you fly in the same cabin. If it was good enough for him, it was good enough for his employees. Pretty cool to fly up front. I was excited, but also a little nervous. What was I supposed to do? 5 hours? Do I work the whole time? Do I watch a movie? I was overdressed. He made fun of me for that. He said, be comfortable. But Steve led by example. So shortly after our 9 a.m. flight took off, he fell asleep. I followed his lead. There is always room for dessert. No explanation there. Be generous. You've heard that from other people a lot today, so I'll talk a little bit about how he was able to be generous, but also teach manners with jokes. One year when the Mets were in town, my wife Jess and I are long-suffering fans. Steve generously gave us his Angels tickets. And as you might imagine, these are top-notch seats, just right behind the dugout, as good as it gets. We were excited. We texted him from the stadium, sent a picture, thank you, this is awesome. He replied, if you're gonna wear a Mets hat, at least turn it around. Be interested and be aware. Steve was one of the most engaging people. He'd ask you questions that made you feel like the center of the universe. An introvert's worst nightmare. In work meetings, he could carry the entire thing. We sometimes joke that all you needed to do was push play. He did have an A and a B side, though. You'd have to flip the cassette over once in a while to get him going. But there was one meeting in Philadelphia where we were on a roll. He had hooked the prospect perfectly, turned the floor over to me. I started talking. We were getting head nods. It's all going really well. And I stupidly kept talking. Anyhow, it ends well. We leave the meeting. The elevator door closes. He turns to me and says, once you've made the sale, stop talking. The best part is he always taught the lessons organically. It was never forced. It was always in a genuine and positive way. He led with warmth, with humor, with authenticity, It was the type of voice you wanted to listen to. He had this remarkable way of making you feel valued while deflecting the attention on himself, from himself. Humility. When accomplishments came up, he was quick to make a self-deprecating joke. He would always praise others, even when he deserved the credit, just like a caring father does for his children. Perhaps his most important lesson, and you've heard it before, is it's all about the people. People, 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 he would say. In the investing business, our assets walk out the door every day. The people come in and out the door. That's what he would say. So surround yourself with great people, and when you find them, hold them tight. It's rare in life and even rarer in business for someone to have the same partner for 40 years or 30 years or 20 years. That kind of loyalty and trust is almost unheard of. It's even more rare than a first ballot Hall of Famer in baseball. And if there were a Cooperstown for people, no doubt Steve would be in on the first ballot. When discussing Steve's passing with our friend and coworker Mike Stevens, Mike said something that really stuck with me. When it hurts so bad, that means it was so good. Boy, was he right. Steve was so good to all of us. Just look around the room. People from all corners of his life, from all over the country, came to celebrate him today, just like he would always celebrate us. Family, friends, teammates, baseball people, coworkers, clients, philanthropic partners, you name it. Steve was so good to us, so good. And that's why it hurts so bad.
Fell asleep, huh, Elon? Can't believe that. Lead by example. I'm with him. Get on a plane, head goes back, I'm asleep. Who do you want to be remembered by? What do you want to be remembered for? Hear it repeatedly, and Elon, you said the same thing. Surround yourself with good people. And those good people start at the root of who we are. It's our family. And our next speaker, I understand the love of a big brother. Big brothers look out for little brothers. Little brothers won't always tell the big brothers they love them. Little brothers won't always give the big brother credit. But what's going to pour forth, I know, in these next couple minutes from Mike Borowski is how much Steve poured into you, how much you loved him, how much you're going to miss him, and who do you want to be remembered by? There's a lot of men that die and pass, and there's no family around to celebrate them. Wow, isn't this great that this is not the case? Mike Borowski, come tell us a little bit about Steve.
Well, thank you. I am Mike, Steve's favorite and only brother. That was our joke. We all know Steve. Everybody in this room knows Steve one way or the other. I have a unique perspective as a little brother. Started thinking about this a couple weeks ago, what I would say, and it started with how his good taste rubbed off on me. We like the same music. We share the same joy and misery of following certain sports teams and love of cars. Steve's, my first, insight into Steve's love of cars is when he was gone playing baseball. He had his beloved Datsun 280Z. And I thought it was orange too, but he had his condo in Orange, and he would ask me to go over there every couple of weeks and turn it over, open up the garage, turn the car over, let it run, but then he would say, don't drive it. I know the exact mileage, down to 1/10 of a mile, don't even think about driving the car. I didn't drive it. So, but That was always kind of like, a fun little story that I would, mention to him every now and then between all the other ridiculous things we'd say to each other. He was the same way as a big brother. Just you couldn't ask for a better big brother. His love for my family. One of the greatest compliments he ever gave me was he compliments my son. And one of the last things he said to me was how proud he was of Jake Ryan. And I was like, whoa, I guess I made it. I made it to the inner circle. So that was very heartfelt. That was nice to hear. But it doesn't come alone. He has a great support group. Linda and his daughters and his grandkids, you've all heard it in here before, how proud he was of everybody in his family, how much he loved his wife and his kids. It was a joy to watch. I remember first going, I think it was probably Christie, our softball games, and I would show up and Steve would be doing hair, ponytails or whatever, in the stands. And I thought to myself, what happened to my big brother? Okay, who is this guy? But then I realized once you start having your own family, it's just something you do, and you love doing it. So I remember him getting tensed up whenever the girls would come to the plate. Just, oh God, it's like swing and miss. Oh God, I'm looking, I go, this is girls softball. It's okay, But he obviously wanted the very best for them. There's so many great things have been said about him and so eloquently. I don't know if I can possibly, match that, but he really was a great man to everybody, to all of us in here. The impact he's made directly, indirectly, it's been a pleasure, and he's gone too soon. But we are all very proud of him. There's a quote, I've been in the classroom for over 30 years, and I have this documentary that I show, and they talk about the person, and one of the last things they say is this quote, and it's always been, that's kind of a cool quote, but it's never hit home to me since Steve's passing. And the quote is, and this makes his philanthropy work, the lights will never go out if it lights 1,000 more. And somehow if we could carry on what Steve started, I think that would make him very happy. Thank you.
Obviously, Mike knew how to follow directions. He didn't drive the car. Do you think he really knew what the odometer was? He did. Who do you want to be remembered by? What do you want to be remembered for? Steve was a girl's dad. Ponytails, braiding hair, all the things that were required, I think is a testament to a man to reflect when we're fathers is what interests your kids. Get interested in that, and Steve did. Christy, our goddaughter, just the love of so many lives, our lives, your husband's lives, but your dad? Oh my, your dad loved you. I remember you on Sunday mornings at church. You had the prettiest bow. I gave that credit at that point to your mom, but I bet at the end your dad could have tied the same bow. Christy Borowski, Steve's oldest daughter.
Thank you for being here today. How lucky am I to have a dad I will miss so, so much. This wouldn't be nearly as difficult if my dad weren't such a wonderful and irreplaceable part of our lives. It's hard to put into words what my dad meant to me. He accomplished so much in his life, but nothing compared to how well he could dad. Despite being the biggest sports guy, being a girl dad was a role he fully embraced and cherished. While my sisters and I weren't particularly girly, he still bought a book to teach himself how to braid our hair, do ponytails, everything. I'd often run out of the dugout, like it was mentioned, during softball games just to have him fix my ponytail because he was the ponytail expert. He loved being the dude of the house and showed us what we deserved in a partner through small but meaningful gestures, like getting a bouquet for his wife and a single rose for each of his daughters on Valentine's Day. He even got away with inventing the term girlies to describe the act of passing gas. Because since he was the only guy, he claimed it was something only girls did. One of my greatest joys was watching my dad become the most spectacular grandpa. He loved his grandkids dearly and was such a big presence in their lives. Sporting events, school performances, birthdays, he always showed up. I'm already missing sharing the latest updates on my kids, like how Colton hit in his baseball game, something witty Kinley said, or Kate hammed me up for a photo. I'll ask someone I could share the big and the small things with, someone who reciprocated my text message with the same excitement, and someone who shared my same dry sense of humor. I lost one of the only people in the world I could brag about my kids to. My dad taught me many things, but most importantly, the value of hard work and perseverance, and also chasing your dreams. He worked up to 4 jobs at once to make ends meet, adding odd jobs on top of his regular finance job, sometimes grocery shopping in the middle of the night because it was the only time he had available. Even after his baseball career in college and minor leagues ended, he still had the itch to pitch. One day, he did something bold. He walked up to Angels star pitcher Nolan Ryan's house, where Nolan Ryan was washing his pickup truck out front with his kids playing. He introduced himself and said, "Hi, I'm Steve Borowski, and I'd like a job with the Angels." And wouldn't you know it, Nolan got him a gig throwing batting practice for the team. For years, he worked in finance by day and moonlit as a warm-up pitcher for the Angels by night. He never gave up on his dream. Losing my dad leaves a hole that can never truly be filled, but his love, lessons, and legacy live in all of us. You won't find a family prouder of their dad than this one, and now it's our turn to make him proud. Dad, you are a rock, our biggest fan, our greatest supporter, and I will tell my kids and grandkids all the wonderful stories about you. Strive to be like you, and instill the best of you in them. We love you beyond words, and we'll miss you beyond measure.
Steve knew how to do that girl dad thing, and we've got the middle daughter. Middle kids are special, aren't they, Kimberly? I think middle kids rock. Who do you want to be remembered by? What do you want to be remembered for? If I think of Kimberly, with all the girls, but with Kimberly, her dad, Steve, always had such lovely things to say in terms of how proud he was of the things that she was doing. We debated a little bit about her going to USC and stuff, but he was still very proud of that. Kimberly Borowski.
Hello, everyone. I think firstly, I know this has been echoed by others, but I think our family's just been so blown away by all the people who've reached out to us and just the wonderful stories they've shared about my dad and about how much of an impact he's made in their lives. And it's been honestly overwhelming, but in a good way. So it's just truly special to hear how much of an impact he had and just how his legacy is living on. So I know we've said this many times, but my dad was a proud girl dad long before the term was popularized. When people had asked him if he wished he had a son, he quickly shut that down. He always taught my sisters and I, that we could do anything we put our minds to, whether that be in sports or school or life. And he instilled in us a toughness when he would tell us to rub some dirt in it when we got hurt. He was the greatest cheerleader, protector, mentor, and father a girl could hope for. The values my dad embodied, those of humility, respect, hard work, and treating people the way we want to be treated, have been ingrained in us my entire life. I will so miss the presence and wisdom my dad brought us in the world, but will carry on those values with myself and my daughter forever. Whew, this part's gonna be hard. The values my dad, there's so many things I'm proud of my dad for, but perhaps the proudest is how he approached his final chapter of life in battle with cancer. He took every step head on and with courage, grace, grit, and steadfast optimism. He never complained and even kept his 4+ years long 10,000 step streak. If anyone knows, he wore his Fitbit every day and kept that going through surgeries and cancer treatments, and it just was such a testament to his determination. Perhaps the greatest act of faith and determination and his biggest passion project and act of love was the incredible playhouse that he was building for my daughter. After my dad's retirement last June, he jumped head in on constructing by hand an amazing playhouse, or should I say ADU, for my daughter Harper in my backyard. It's huge. It's amazing. Even on days when he wasn't feeling well for his treatment, he would be in my backyard hauling lumber, framing, and dreaming up his vision. When we visited him in the hospital after his brain surgery, we talked at length about all the little details, from the finishes to the wainscotings to the built-ins he had planned. I feel so lucky to have such a beautiful representation of his love and legacy in my backyard, and one that my daughter will enjoy for years to come. I feel so lucky to have Steve Borowski as my dad. I'll close with a quote from the movie The Sandlot, and keeping the baseball theme going. I was watching it recently with my daughter, and the quote from Babe Ruth towards the end stuck at me as just the perfect representation of my dad. He said, "Everybody gets one chance to do something great. Most people never take that chance, either because they're too scared or they don't recognize it when it spits on their shoes. But remember, kid, there's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die. Follow your heart, kid, and you'll never go wrong." My dad truly was a legend in every way, and even though he's not with us physically anymore, his legacy will never die. Thank you for everything, Dad.
How good did he do that girl dad thing? Poise, Christy, Kimberly. My dad passed away over 20 years ago, and I don't know if I could get up and speak with the same degree of poise about my dad as you two have already. And we've got one more beautiful young lady. You know, I think Kelsey, one of the best things is Kelsey was living in Seattle. We went up to Seattle because I was told 75 and sunny does not trump by grandchildren, so we moved to the Northwest to be near grandchildren. Let me tell you, yeah, they were right. I'll take grandchildren over 75 and sunny. But what it brought was it meant that Steve and Linda would come up. And some of you may not know this, Steve is really handy, and he did a lot of work around Kelsey's place. And I was always thinking, God, Steve, why don't you just hire somebody to do that? No, it was a love that he wanted to pour in, that he had a piece of her living space. And Kelsey, I think you'll always have that. So our last family member is Kelsey Borowski.
Hi, everyone. I am Kelsey. I'm Steve's youngest daughter. Wow, standing up here, it's wild to see so many people. My family is so grateful for each of you for not only showing up today, but for all the different roles that you've held in my dad's life. And being up here, seeing all of you gives me a newfound respect for my dad's comfort zone in speaking to large groups of people. Mine is in like a therapy office across from a single client. But I will try to channel my inner Steve Borowski. So as I was trying my hand at amateur graphic design for the email invitations you received and programs you hold in your hands, I wrote out the years my dad was alive, 1957 to 2025. Something didn't really look right to me though, the simple dash in between. After some thought, I replaced it with a long dash, because 67 years on this earth isn't long enough, but that longer dash just seems like a better representation of how much my dad did with his 67 years. His very full life makes my attempt to summarize what he meant to me and what his legacy is a very, very tall order. So many of you know my dad through friendship, the working world, or being involved in organizations with him, but very few of you can call him dad. And that's what I'm lucky to be able to speak to. But actually, I only called him Dad about half of the time. The other half I referred to him as Dude, and in turn, he lovingly called me Dudette. My dad was a big sports guy, to no one's surprise. I think we've touched on that. As most of you know, he was a pitcher in college, briefly in the minor leagues, and then pitched batting practice for the Angels. And pretty much right until the end, my dad would still practice his pitching motion at random. It was like, sometimes, it was just a little bit of this, or sometimes it was like the full windup, just, in the middle of the hallway, wherever. And given his athletic background, people would often imply that my dad should have had a son. But he never once agreed with them. Granted, I think we were treated the exact same way he'd treat sons if he had some. We were thrown into sports as early as possible. My dad, as we've touched on, would give us impossibly tight ponytails and just send us out on the field and, as Kim mentioned, tell us to rub some dirt in it if we got hurt. And I was lucky enough to inherit my dad's handiness from a young age and take after his propensity to build and fix things. I still remember the very first project that I did with him that kind of gave me the home improvement bug. When I was 7 or 8, we went to the hardware store to build a support structure for like a flat screen TV. And I just got such a kick out of building it with him and loved all the little projects we got to do together after that. Being able to help him a bit with framing the famed playhouse that Kim mentioned was something I will be forever grateful that I got to do with him in his last few good months. In more recent years, I've done projects on my own home, getting to pick his brain about how to build a mantle or sending him progress photos on making built-ins for my closet, paneling my fireplace around, regrouting my shower. And without fail, no matter how beginner-friendly a project was, my dad would tell me with complete sincerity that I should have a show on HGTV. He was just such a good cheerleader in general, but especially in that area. I was talking with my mom about how half the time he got into his car after he'd been driving on his own, the volume would just be turned up impossibly high and start blaring music. And he'd always say something like, "Oops, don't know how that happened." Only I knew exactly how that happened. My dad taught me to sing to my heart's content and perform drum solos on the steering wheel as if I was throwing a personal concert to the drivers in the neighboring cars that were just lucky enough to get a glimpse of it. And he knew when to not take himself too seriously. He had a subtly witty sense of humor that could turn goofy in a second. And even in his last few days on Earth, he was cracking jokes with caregivers and visitors and just laughing and using humor up until the very end. Something that's been really special over the last couple months is hearing from so many people about what my dad meant to them or new stories that I'd never heard before. Through you all and also through just helping sort through some of his things, I've continued to get to know him even more, and I definitely find some comfort in knowing that I'll probably still get to learn new things about him for years to come. So if you have any stories to share, I'll always love to hear them. Thank you for listening and for making my dad's life full of enough good people to fill this theater. I do think he's here in some form or another, feeling gratitude for every one of you. Thank you.
Grace and poise, Christy, Kimberly, Kelsey, just grace and poise, just beautiful. Who do you want to be remembered by and what do you want to be remembered for? I said at the outset, by the end, we'd have a clear picture of the things that moved Steve's heart, the people he loved, the teams he led, the causes that stirred his heart. A couple themes come out. Chancellor Gilman, remember your foundation, who poured into you first. Dennis, friendship. You want to be remembered as a good friend. Sloan, you said time, talent, and treasures. You want to be remembered for using those well. Catalina, I'm not going to try to get that last name again, but consistency and that belief, you've got this. Elon, you had so many things, but it's people. Surround yourself with great people. And if they're not great at the time, figure out a way to help them become great. Mike, brother's love never goes away. I had a mentor who once told me, if you put your family first, you'll never be disappointed. Living proof today. Linda, it would not be appropriate to close today without pointing out what a rock you are. Graceful, kind, loving. I've gone through this a couple times with others, but when a wife has to stand by and watch the progression of somebody that they've dedicated and built a life with and say goodbye and do it with grace, oh my, Linda, you are a picture of that. Love you so much. It's such an honor to be in this position. So as I close here today, I'm going to take you back to February 7th. We mentioned Steve was very private, but I want to give you another little insight into Steve. Some things he talked about, some things he didn't. We knew Steve was ill for some time before Steve knew I knew he was ill. And I knew he was battling for his life, and Christy and I prayed for Steve daily. And I vividly remember praying for Steve on February 7th. God just pressing upon my heart to send Steve a note. A message of acknowledgement, encouragement, and truth. And so I want to just take a moment and read to you the text that I sent to Steve that morning. Good morning, my dear friend. My prayer for you this morning was for the ceaseless and overwhelming peace of the Lord to be your companion today. Steve, you've been a blessing to my family and me. God blessed me in a mighty way when he wove our lives together over 40 years ago. Most men seek success without recognizing that the critical target was significance and impact. You got it right. You were blessed with success and used your time, talent, and I said resources, Sloan. I'm going to throw treasures in there to bless countless people. Your impact will be felt for generations to come. My respect for you is indescribable. You're a man of honor, integrity, and goodness. I love that I get to call you my friend. Who could have foreseen that Linda and Christy would become the dearest of friends too? I love to tell people about my friend Steve, who loves his wife, loves and pours into his girls and grandkids, and has a heart for what is good, pure, and trustworthy. Steve, I pray for God to heal you every day. In this lifetime, we will never understand why the Lord chooses our paths or how he assigns the number of our days. But I do know that his love for you and for me is absolute, manifest in Jesus Christ. Every morning, I pray the 23rd Psalm. I celebrate the ending line of this passage because I know if I don't get to say goodbye to you face to face, I will get to hug you in the company of Jesus in eternity. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You are with me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Steve, men don't say what they should say to each other too often. I want you to know that I'm grateful for you. I love you. May God's peace and comfort be your steadfast companion in the days ahead. Yofo, you only finish once. Imagine the fullness of God's grace and mercy poured out upon Steve as Jesus opened his arms and said, "Well done, good and faithful servant, well done." A.W. Tozer once wrote that what a man or woman says when they're asked who Jesus is says everything you'd ever want to know about him. Steve was a very private man, but I go back to our early days. Linda and Steve lived in Huntington Beach. We lived in Huntington Beach. We both attended Grace Lutheran Church. I'll never forget Pastor Paul Johnson. It was always fantastic. But if we come to the end of our days and we're asked, and then what? The only questions that matters, and the only one I really truly want to be remembered by, is Jesus. And I'm so grateful that Jesus knew Steve, Steve knew him, because one day we will stand together in the presence of the Lord, and I'll be so grateful for that. Thank you all on behalf of the family for being here. The girls would love to hear those stories, I know. My dad passed 20 years ago, and I never push away a story of learning more about who he was, because Steve, again, he didn't talk, he just walked. But all of you are carrying stories with you that I hope that you'll carry out into your families and your communities. Under that whole auspice, that whole umbrella, who do you want to be remembered by, and what do you want to be remembered for? We have so many great things to be remembering Steve for, and we're thankful for his life. Thanks for being here.